Ali Kadri, Islamic Council of Queensland spokesman, joined me from Brisbane a short time ago. Ali Kadri, thanks for your time. The question in this essential poll this week was pretty simple. It said, would you support or oppose a ban on Muslim Australia to Australia? And 49% of Australians supported that sentiment. Were you surprised at that?
Thank you for having me today. But look, I am surprised. I'm surprised and shocked. But without doubting the integrity of the poll, and I know that they did it twice, I would really like to do this poll again, because I believe that this was done around the timing where there was a lot of fear-mongering, especially from our Senate. And I think the results are not really reflective of what Australia is or what Australians are.
Should we be surprised, though? I mean, should you be surprised? Because historically, Australians, well, for a long time have been fairly uncomfortable with immigration, even though we've had high levels of it. In 1991, for example, 73% at that time felt migration was too high.
And, you know, I was reading some other figures. Straight after the Second World War, I think about 58% people, if I'm not wrong, did not want any Jewish migration. I think the figure for the Italians was about 56%. But I would think that as a country, we have learned from that. And we definitely repelled the White Australia policy. So as a country, we would have grown. But obviously, the poll suggests that we need to do a lot more to get this prejudice out of our country.
At a time when terrorists are committing atrocities against our way of life and against the Islamic world, are you surprised, that Australians feel that migration could be an issue when they're doing it in the name of Islam, even if they are hijacking that religion?
Look, let me first of all tell you this. I don't believe that terrorists are doing this because they don't like the way of life of the West. They're making a political statement. They're using terror to make a political change in the Muslim world. Now, one thing we've got to get it straight is that majority of the victims of these terrorists are Muslims, and the majority of people who are fighting against are Muslims. So I don't think terrorists are doing this because of the way of life issues. It's a complex issue. In Middle East or whatever is happening overseas is happening because of certain reasons, political reasons. Here there are other reasons, and a lot of experts and researchers have told us that there is a range of issues, from social issues to economical issues to alienation and so on and so forth, which is causing these lone wolf attacks. However, let's put it into the context. According to the federal police, there's about 120 people who have traveled overseas, and there are about 150 people who are sympathetic to these terrorists. So they are talking about 250 people. But the amount of airtime this gets, and especially when it gets blown out of proportion in the media, and also certain politicians who are probably, I think, looking to take a political advantage to push a hard right agenda, and not necessarily because of the Muslims, but they're pushing this agenda because they want to take over the discourse in the liberal progressive world, which has been the case since Second World War, where we have progressed in the West and we have had a liberal progressive view. But I think Muslims are getting scapegoated by the hard right and by the extremists on the right to take the narrative back.
Most, though, in this poll said the main reason that they voted in that way was not terrorists, the terrorist threat. 27% named that. 41% said that they didn't feel that Muslim people integrated into our society as well. Now, historically, our migrants have usually come from European countries. Is there a problem in any sense with Muslim integration into Australian society?
And I don't think so that either, because what is integration? Integration, to my understanding, is believing in the rule of law, believing in democracy, believing in freedom of speech and freedom of religion. Now, majority of the Muslims believe in all these tenets of Islam, of Australian law, and it does not contradict anything within Islam. Now, in my opinion, I think Senator Pauline Hanson is not integrated because she wants to ban the mosques, and we have freedom of religion given to us in our constitution. So what is integration? We need to talk about what integration is. I can't get a red hair and a white skin. It's not going to happen. I can't do that. So unfortunately, if that is integration, then that won't happen. But as far as integration, I see integration, it is believing in the rule of law, believing in the freedom of religion, and believing in our democracy. And I think majority of the Muslims do so, and we are very well integrated by that sense.
Sure, you say the majority, but there is a small element. Do you accept that do not accept our rule of law, do not accept our way of life here, living here now?
I believe, from what I read, I believe that there are some who have bought into this propaganda by the extremist groups, Muslim extremist groups overseas, where they believe that the only way to live for Muslims is under their form of Khilafah, which is rejected by majority of the Muslims. Now, there is a tiny minority which may believe in this. However, there is a tiny minority of extremists in all communities. We have people in Australia who are non-Muslims who don't believe in our constitution. They believe our constitution is wrong, and they're anti-government groups. There are groups in America who are anti-government groups. So there are those groups. Unfortunately, nobody blames the religion of those people. Nobody blames the whole Christianity for what tiny portion of Christian community does. When it comes to Muslims, if one Muslim does one thing wrong, then every single Muslim in Australia is guilty of that crime. And I think we need to sit down and see what we're doing here. We're actually seriously painting all Muslims with the same brush. Now, today somebody was tweeting to me on Twitter because I went on drum last week, said, why don't you get a Hindu on drum? I did not go into the drum because I'm a Muslim. I went to the drum because I'm an Australian. And all the issues I was talking about affects me as much as it affects anybody else. And if a white person, a Christian person goes on drum, do people question their religion? Why is my religion getting questions? Why is my religion brought into everything I do? Not everything I do is because of religion. I'm an Australian like everybody else, and that is a very important part of my identity.
Bill Shorten today said that a government is not worth its salt if it's not willing to stand up for minorities. It's time for Malcolm Turnbull to tell Australians which side he's on. Do you think the Prime Minister and the government have done enough to counter this view that Pauline Hanson and others have put?
I think none of us have done enough. I think all of us needs to do more. And if the politician, if the party which is in power has to do a lot more than the party which is in opposition, but at the same time opposition has to do a lot more as well. And even individuals like us have to do a lot more. Look, with this poll, as I was telling you in the beginning, the reason it surprised and shocked me is because I believe that we would have evolved as Australians and not be as prejudicial as we were in the past. However, I would really like to do another poll and find out where the public opinion stands. And we need to show some leadership, and not just from the political parties, but also from media and other areas, where we challenge these views, because these views are absolutely wrong. And we are today regretting the fact that we put Japanese in the concentration camp. We wanted to lock them up in the Second World War. We are regretting the fact that we were racist and we had a white Australia policy. Why are we repeating that history again? Why are we talking about banning people on the basis of their faith?
And those comments from Bill Shorten, I mean, are they unhelpful then? Is that what you're suggesting?
No, what I'm saying is that he's right, we need to do a lot more, but all of us need to do a lot more. I was really disappointed when I saw that after Pauline Hanson's speech, some of the senators went and gave her a hug. Look, she has all the rights to say whatever she wants to say from the parliament. She has freedom of speech, and nobody should stop her from saying what she was saying. But going out and giving her a hug is actually supporting her views, in my opinion. And I think that legitimizes the ignorance and the wrong views which don't belong in Australia. The extremism like that does not belong in Australia.
Ali Kadri, the spokesperson for the Islamic Council of Queensland, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.